He was supposed to be the heir, the natural successor to the golden generation of Messi, Ronaldo and Neymar, with a wand of a left foot, dazzling footwork and a smile that made many viewers misjudge his ruthless instinct in the final third. Paulo Dybala burst onto the scene like a comet. His early years carried the aura of destiny, with goals, flair, vision, and that intangible spark that made people believe he was extraordinary. Every touch boasted a promise of greatness. For a moment, he wasn't just a star, he was the star. And still, somehow, he never quite got there. There was no dramatic fall, no scandal, no catastrophic injury, just a quiet fading. A story of missed moments and sliding doors, of managers who couldn't figure him out, of systems that didn't entirely suit him, and maybe, just maybe, a player too sensitive, too selfless, to demand the spotlight in an era that rewards ego as much as excellence. As he steps into his early 30s, Dybala remains an elite player, a world champion, a gifted artist, but the prophecy remains somewhat unfulfilled. He didn't fall short because he wasn't good enough. He fell short because football, like life, isn't always fair. And sometimes, even the brightest talents are at the mercy of timing, circumstance, and the spaces they're asked to fit into. Let's go back to where it all began and try to understand why Dybala could never quite become what everyone thought he would. Born in Laguna Larga in Argentina, he was dubbed La Joya, which means the jewel, during his early days. Aged 17, he scored 17 goals in 38 appearances, breaking club records and showcasing maturity far beyond his years. In 2012, Serie A side Palermo brought him to Italy for 11.9 million euros. At the time, the fee raised eyebrows, but Maurizio Zamparini, Palermo's eccentric president, was convinced. At Palermo, Dybala started slowly, but by the 2014-15 season, he had bloomed. That year, he scored 13 goals and registered 10 assists in the Serie A. He could drop deep to control the tempo, thread passes, take set pieces, and score from anywhere, in and around the box. It wasn't long before the Giants came knocking. In the summer of 2015, Serie A's most dominant force at the time signed Dybala for 32 million euros, potentially rising to 40 million with add-ons. Many wondered how he would fit in a team known for grit and defensive steel, but under Allegri's guidance, Dybala thrived. Juventus had just lost Pirlo, Vidal and Tevez that summer, yet Dybala made the transition look seamless. In his debut season, he scored 23 goals and assisted 7 more. He didn't just replace Carlos Tevez, he surpassed his numbers. Fans instantly fell in love. He had the technique and intelligence of a number 10, the composure of a seasoned striker, and the flair that reminded Italians of Roberto Baggio. But it wasn't just the domestic stage where he impressed. In 2017, during a Champions League quarter-final clash with Barcelona, Dybala produced a masterclass. He scored 2 goals in the first half in Turin, helping the old lady win 3-0. It felt like a defining moment, like his global coming-of-age party. But as quickly as the rise came, things began to shift. The modern game is obsessed with roles, data, and tactical systems, and Dybala, who was an instinctive, free-roaming creator, never truly fit into this evolving puzzle. In his early years at Juve, he played behind the striker in a 4-2-3-1 or as a second striker in a 4-4-2. But as managers changed and systems evolved, his best position seemed to vanish. Coaches didn't know where to use him. This identity crisis became pronounced with the arrival of Cristiano Ronaldo in 2018. Juventus built their team around the Portuguese star, shifting the team's dynamics entirely. Ironically, just before Ronaldo arrived at Juventus, Dybala had just enjoyed one of his most spectacular seasons. In 2017-18, he scored 26 goals across all competitions, orchestrating attacks with technical elegance and his creative imagination. He wasn't just seen as a fan favourite, He was seen as the natural heir to Juventus' legacy in the post-Buffon, post-Chiellini era. For a moment, it felt like he would be the crown jewel of the next generation. But that changed almost overnight when Ronaldo signed in 2018. Suddenly, the system no longer revolved around the Argentines' fluid movement. Ronaldo required a structure built around direct and consistent service into the box. The team adapted to meet those demands, and Dybala was the one who had to compromise. His once central role was reduced. Between 2018 and 2020, his goal tally dropped, his influence wore off, and the body language of a player once full of joy turned uncertain. And it wasn't just about tactics. The psychological weight of being sidelined after being the face of the club seemed to dent his confidence. But what was even worse was that he no longer had a defined role in the show. Dybala never openly blamed Ronaldo, but the shift was unmistakable. From talisman to afterthought, his trajectory took a detour just as it was reaching its peak, and maybe it never fully recovered. Throughout his career, Dybala has had nagging injuries, which were mostly muscle-related. None were career-threatening, but their timing was always cruel. Every time he built momentum, a setback would arrive. During the 2020-21 season, he made just 20 appearances due to injury and tested positive for COVID twice. Juventus, under new manager Pirlo, failed to adapt, and Dybala was barely a factor in a chaotic season that saw their 9-year Serie A reign end. Meanwhile, new talents were rising. The signing of Chiesa was huge. Even youngsters like Moise Kean were being promoted into this new age Juve side. Dybala, who was once untouchable, suddenly became expendable. Some critics say that he didn't have the mentality to dominate football. While players like Mbappe and Haaland project unshakable confidence, Dybala was quieter, more sensitive, and more emotional. He rarely demanded the spotlight. At times, he appeared to shrink in high-pressure moments, especially for Argentina, where he struggled to find a role behind Messi and Di Maria. He admitted in interviews that he found it hard to deal with the constant comparisons and expectations. By the time he left Juventus in 2022, Dybala had won 5 Serie A titles, 4 Coppa Italias, and scored 115 goals in 293 appearances. He was even named Serie A MVP in 2019-20. That's no small feat. When you watch Dybala at his best, you saw an absolute genius. When he dropped a shoulder, ghosted past a defender, or curled a shot into the far corner, you saw someone who could have touched the absolute peak. But something always got in the way. After 7 years at Juventus, he joined Roma on a free transfer. It was seen as a steal for Jose Mourinho's side. Roma needed star power. Dybala needed a system that revolved around him again. In his first season, he was electric. His debut goal against Monza was a classic curling left footer, which was a reminder of what he could still do at his best. He finished the 2022-23 season with 18 goals and 8 assists in all competitions, and played a vital role in Roma's run to the Europa League final. But even in a city that adored him, the underlying themes persisted. Injury spells continued. He missed more than 10 games across competitions due to thigh and hamstring issues. Mourinho even admitted frustration in press conferences. Surprisingly, not with the player's attitude, but with his body's lack of reliability. And for all his magic, Roma were still a Europa-level side. Dybala wasn't at the Champions League table anymore, not at the Ballon d'Or gala, not in the FIFA's best shortlist. It felt like he had quietly slid out of the elite conversation. For years, Argentina's coaches like Tata Martino, Jorge Sampaoli, and even Lionel Scaloni found it hard to fit Dybala into the starting 11. He rarely started in major tournaments. During the 2018 World Cup, he played just 22 minutes. In the Copa America of 2019, he only made 2 appearances. Even during Argentina's victorious 2022 World Cup campaign, Dybala's role was minimal. He only played 17 minutes in the final against France, and that was only after Di Maria had been subbed out and the team needed fresh legs. His only major contribution? Calmly slotting home a penalty in the shootout. Crucial, absolutely, but also symbolic of his international career as someone always on the fringes. But in a country obsessed with comparing talent to Maradona and Messi, Dybala was always the other guy. Sometimes a player's fortunes don't just depend on talent, but on timing. Dybala hit his peak just as world football was changing. The era of the classic number 10 was fading. Tactical systems demanded higher pressing forwards, athletic wide players, and midfielders who could run for 90 minutes. When you look at the stars who rose during Dybala's era, like Mbappe, Haaland, and Vinicius Jr., they're all incredibly dynamic, physically imposing, or devastating in transition. Dybala, with his slower build-up style and preference for tight spaces, felt like a throwback to an older game. He wasn't the only one affected. Isco, James Rodriguez, and Mesut Ozil, who were players of similar playing styles, all faded away as systems evolved. But while others adapted or changed leagues, Dybala seems stuck between being a support striker and a central playmaker in an age where neither role was in demand. At 31, Dybala isn't finished. Far from it. There's still room for a resurgence. Injuries permitting, he remains one of the most technically gifted players in Europe. His passing range, ball control, and eye for goal are still elite, and in the right system, and perhaps under a manager who builds around his strengths, he could still deliver moments of brilliance. But let's be honest, he may never become the global superstar we once expected. Not because he wasn't good enough, but because too many things outside of his control conspired against him. When evaluating his career, it's tempting to label him as a nearly man, someone who could have dominated but didn't, but that's not entirely fair. He won 5 Serie A titles, a World Cup, and reached a Champions League final. He has iconic moments, iconic goals, and was beloved by fans wherever he played. He's not a failure, not even remotely close. In the end, Dybala's story may be a lesson, that not every talent, no matter how bright, becomes a legend. Sometimes, even the brightest jewels stay buried just beneath the surface. Let's see if he can turn things around in the late stages of his career. Maybe a move to a Champions League club is still on the cards. But what do you think? Which club should he go for one last attempt to make the most of his late career? Let us know below.